the lifeless body of a boy, of a 60-year-old man rather, has been found lying in a plantation located in Nancy district in Melong, Mongo division of the Littoral region of Cameroon. Out of the country, we shall be talking about Nigerian protesters who have defied a curfew during a face-off with security forces as demonstrations against the police brutality threaten to paralyze the nation. Details. Good evening once more, and thank you for joining us. Pope Francis has announced a support to same-sex couple. In a recent documentary, he states out that same-sex couples should have a legal protection when forming civil partnership. This is known to be the first time something like this is being tolerated of a clergyman of his caliber. In the following report, we get the details of this recent declaration. Homosexuals have a right to be part of the family. They are children of God and have the right to a family. Pope Francis of the Roman Catholic Church, in a new documentary, made out these statements. The documentary, known as Francesco, released this October 21st, 2020. He said, homosexual people have the right to be in a family as they are children of God. This is known to be a declaration of support for same-sex civil unions for the first time during his tenure as Pope. He stated out that gay couples deserve legal protections for their relationship, and the couple should be made to feel special and feel more welcomed in the church, and nobody should be thrown out or be made miserable because of it. It should be noted that before he was elected Pope, Pope Francis served as the Archbishop of Buenos Aires, and in that role, he advocated for same-sex civil unions in an attempt to block same-sex marriage law. Pope Francis has urged a more welcoming church for LGBT people, with his response indicating that he is no one to judge. He calls on Catholics to focus on humanity for LGBT people than judging. So WorldCom says the LGBT population has a right to life. Flora Jingla, in the following report, samples the opinions of this human rights activist.
Following Pope Francis's declaration on same-sex civil unions, there has been a wild upsurge of reactions between religious people and the world in general, as even the social media has come up with all forms of analysis. The Catholic doctrine initially does not is certainly what explains the fact that religious figures have been very careful about addressing such a matter or airing their point of view on the vulnerable minority.
And that was human rights activist and lawyer Maitre Alice Com, who tried to the views of human rights. As she clearly stated out, homosexuals have a right to life. Let us now get different views. Release of the cost. This is totally off.
God came and judged that entire city because of homosexuality. Paul laid emphasis in the book of Romans about God condemning effeminate and God condemning homosexuality. Whom we know is a custodian of the Holy Scriptures should not have acted anything lesser than saying that he endorses homosexuality. I totally condemn the idea, and I call on all and sundry to understand that the idea of homosexuality is what brought judgment upon the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, and equally God is condemning it today. Human beings, governments, administration, and legislations may legalize homosexuality, but the truth is it is not of God, and it is condemned both in the Old and the New Testament. My stand is that the Papa should rephrase his statement and be able to clarify the entire globe, because why? That statement has sent shocking waves across the entire globe.
To the moderator of the Presbyterian Church, Funky Samuel, On his social media handle, he blastly condemns this, saying homosexuality will forever remain a detestable sin. Biblical values and African values are all very clear on this. Equally, the Roman Catholic priest, Reverend Father Blessed Jume of the Kmer Diocese, a viral conversation says the Pope was not in support of homosexual marriages, but simply saying homosexuals are children of God and should be treated that way. He continues by saying homosexual will always remain against the religion. This and many more opinions have been popping up on social media from different Christian faithfuls at first time. Various opinions are heating up over social media and different platforms. And now let us talk something else. The Minister of Public Works, Emmanuel Ngano Jumesi, is in the Littoral region of the country with these images. Giving you this information in brief with our reporter who was down there in the field, Patrice Foucault. Emmanuel Ngano Jumesi is in the Littoral region. At the debut of his visit, he went to the east entry into the city of Douala at Yassa to see the nature of the roads, which has been causing serious traffic and almost halting circulation in the city. The minister, after his visit, gave up to the 15th of December 2020 for contractors to complete work at the east entry in the city of Douala. Minister Ngano Jumesi continued his visit to the Mongo division to efficiently assess public works projects which are ongoing in the region. Like we see, he was received by an entourage of administrative and security officials in the Littoral region who accompanied him on his tour in the different public works projects in the region. Let us now talk a human interest story, as the lifeless body of a 60-year-old man has been found lying in a plantation located in Melong, that is the Mongo division of the Littoral region, after having gotten missing for over 4 months now. In the following report, Vinin Akum Ama and Chateau Vallon gives us details.
Jean Lambo is the name of the 60-year-old man whose body was found in a plantation at the beginning of the week under doubtful circumstances. Reports have it that he went missing for almost 4 months now. The man in question was declared missing after leaving his home but did not return within 24 hours. For some time now, the town of Melong has been inundated with messages about his disappearance. As such, a group of people had mobilized to go in search for him, although they were still in doubt with what happened to him. It is there that his body was found at the plantation in the Nancy district under doubtful circumstances. In the meantime, the comments are entirely devoted to the continuation, which is known to all. The Melong Gendarmerie and the authorities went down to the scene to carry out a report, as investigations have been opened to determine the exact circumstances that led to his death. This is just one amongst the few incidents which happens lately whereby the body of people are being found under unclear circumstances.
And now onto something else. A 26-year-old Cameroonian man has been nabbed by some police officers in the city of Douala. He's one of the suspects who have reportedly harmed a lady a few days back in the city of Douala. Florent Jingla was there present on the presentation of this armed bandit.
Neutralisé par la police, non?
Non, non, c'est quand le monsieur a arrêté que la police est venue nous prendre. Je ne connaissais même pas que c'était la police.
Presented at the Regional Division for Judicial Police of the Littoral Region last 18th October 2020 in Douala, Bonanjo precisely, this young man who goes by the name Zofak Njokang Donatien, 26 years old, is suspected to have been the accomplice in the harassment of a lady whose bag was seized recently at the Felrouche Besenge neighborhood a few days ago. His accomplice, a certain Patu, who ran off at the moment when the police got hold of him, is still on the run. On being interviewed by men of the press, he explained that the runaway brigand was always asking him to accompany him on a bike, but that he was not aware he was a thief. Allegations which to the interviewers seemed very false.
Vous avez déclaré qu'il a arraché le sac. Comment le saviez-vous?
Il a arraché. C'est sur le terrain qu'on crie bandit.
It is the first time I'm being held for such a crime. I have never done such a thing before. They said the guy is a big brother in the neighborhood, and since I just bought my bike only 2 days ago, he asked me to accompany him. That is exactly what happened, and then I was caught by the police.
Mais à l'exploitation du listing, nous avons constaté que vous vous appelez depuis pratiquement plus de 2 semaines.
It was a bad day indeed for Donatien because the police nearby spotted him and immediately handcuffed him to take him to the police post. These boys are suspected to be of the gang codenamed Les Microbes, who have been recently causing a lot of panic and insecurity in some neighborhoods in the city of Douala.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, let us get this update, which is reaching us right now from the capital city of the Kmer division, Kumba, as Gregory Mewanyu is the new city mayor of Kumba. After 40 years, Victor Ngokele is finally stepping down, and power is about to change hands in the city of Kumba. This was after he was outvoted at the elections today in Kumba. We shall be getting more updates on this on subsequent editions of our newscast. Let us now talk something else, still remaining in Kumba, in order to fight against illiteracy by providing a better learning environment. The Kumba 2 Subdivisional Council has handed over two newly constructed classrooms to the government school Ekemba, that is in the Kumba 2 municipality, as foraging land. Prince Oben Agbo tells us in the following report.
Wednesday, October 21st, this donation is taking place at the school campus in Fiango, handing over the keys of these classrooms to the Inspector of Basic Education for Kumba 2 Subdivision, Ivo Matuke Ebako. The second Deputy Mayor of Kumba 2 Subdivisional Council, Vivian Aingona Chibili, expressed satisfaction on the effective start of the new school year in the municipality and stated that these classrooms would go a long way in encouraging the learning process within the school milieu.
There are many things that we are seeing, from road infrastructure to public buildings. There are many things. But in the educational sector, as I said, if you look at the campus, you see we need a few toilets. There are many things. We need more of these kind of infrastructures. So I'm very sure by next year, I'll maybe not be handing just 2, we may be handing 4 to 6 more classrooms for this institution.
Thank you.
She enjoined the school authorities to put the classrooms into maximum use. The classrooms have been constructed under the Public Investments Project and falls within the framework of government specifications.
I'm calling on the parents that the time is now. I said in my launching speech that it is the parents who are responsible for the future of their children. And since they have decided to send their children back to school, we are equally calling on those who are still sleeping to continue to send their children back to school. Ekemba was not like this. Last years before now, we used to have over 800 children here, but we want to thank God that at this level we are climbing up to 200 plus children in GS Ekemba here. So we are
receiving the donation. The Inspector of Basic Education for Kumba 2 Subdivision thanked the Kumba 2 Subdivisional Council for the provision of the modern edifices for learning. He said the gesture would provide a conducive environment which plays an important aspect in the teaching-learning process. The donation comes few weeks after a similar one was done by the Kumba 2 Subdivisional Council to Government Nursery School Ekemba in Fiango.
And now we take this sports update before we move to our international page. The head coach of the Intermediate Lions of Cameroon, Yves Clement Ahoga, has been sacked. This comes after a Fcfa evaluation which was signed by the Minister of Sport and Physical Education, Narcisse Mwelekombi. To replace him, Ntugo Pile was appointed as the new coach of the Intermediate Lions of Cameroon and will be assisted by Pagu David. This appointment comes less than 3 months before the holding of the African Nations Championship from January to February 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, on this note, we now take you out of the country. Nigerian protesters have defied a curfew during a face-off with security forces as demonstrations against police brutality are threatened to paralyze the nation.
An early morning fire set by arsonists burns parked vehicles at a government bus station in Lagos. Officials say 30 buses were destroyed. In Lekki, where security forces opened fire on protesters the previous night, the standoff continues. The Lagos State Governor, who visited victims of Tuesday's attack in hospital, said more than 24 have been hospitalized.
Fellow Lagosians, whilst we pray for the swift recovery of the injured, we are comforted that we have not recorded any fatality as against the widespread circulation on social media.
But protesters dispute that.
I can't really say who was shooting, but we know who was shooting. Do you get it? And I can't give you the actual number of casualties because I'm not God. I had to run for my life. Other people were running for their lives. They died in the process. They got injured in the process. So I don't know the number of casualties at the time I escaped from my own life.
Amnesty International agrees, saying there appears to be credible evidence of fatalities, but the pictures have not been independently verified. The United Nations Secretary General, who's spoken with President Buhari in recent days, has called for restraint.
It's time for all countries to understand, and I hope Nigeria will be able to do so, that police brutality needs to stop, and those that are responsible for acts of such dramatic violence are made accountable. And this is essential everywhere.
Protests started 2 weeks ago after a policeman shot and killed a man in the south of the country. The protesters are demanding the scrapping of a rogue police unit accused of murder, extortion and disappearances. They also want an overhaul of Nigeria's police system, the trial of the officers accused of crimes and compensation for victims. Some of these demands have been met, but deep distrust remains between protesters and government. Journalists have also been caught up in the sudden turn of events. Here, an independent television station in the city is set on fire. A few hours later, another broadcaster was temporarily forced off air because of what it calls an imminent threat to its staff and operations. Here in the capital, the streets are calmer than in Lagos. Earlier on Wednesday, security forces dispersed a group of young men gathering on the outskirts of Abuja. Many schools and businesses here remain shut for most of the day.
And now we talk something else. Protests have begun in Colombia's capital against the police resident. Union members, students, teachers and the indigenous people are taking part in a national strike, calling for better social and economic policies to be implemented. In the following report with Corti from Al Jazeera News.
Waving flags and chanting against the president, thousands of Colombians marched in downtown Bogota. It's the largest demonstration in the Colombian capital since the easing of coronavirus restrictions in September. A coalition of union members, teachers, students and activists are demanding a variety of concessions, among them a minimum survival income for those who lost their jobs during the pandemic.
We want the government to talk to us. This shouldn't be the attitude of a leader interested in unity. Only by talking to all sectors of society can we find common solutions.
Almost 10,000 representatives of Colombia's many indigenous and ethnic groups also traveled to the capital, demanding to meet with President Iván Duque. They're calling for an end to the killings of hundreds of human rights activists and the rising violence in their territories. They accuse Duque of turning a blind eye to the killings and the peace accord signed 4 years ago with a rebel group that promised to end years of violence.
We will not stand idly at home anymore. We are back on the streets demanding guarantees for our life and demand this government implements the peace accord. This is a message for the international community as well. They can't keep silent.
Anger against the government had already reached the boiling point a year ago, with some of the biggest demonstrations in decades, before being muted by the pandemic. President Iván Duque has dismissed the protesters' demands as politically motivated, also refusing to meet with the leaders of the strike and the indigenous organizations that traveled to Bogotá. He says the protest could cause another major virus outbreak, just as the country's economy is trying to recover.
Nothing justifies putting our health and life at risk right now. If we need to discuss, let's do it within the framework of democracy, without issuing a summons or ultimatums or invoking judgments that have no basis in reality.
But protesters and their leaders say they will continue to confront the government, calling for another strike a month from now, on the anniversary of last year's mass demonstrations that brought the country to a halt. Alessandro Ampietti, Al Jazeera, Bogotá.
And now, after more than a week of protest in Thailand, the Prime Minister has lifted an emergency decree that bans all gatherings in the country.
Sirawit Seli Tiwat started speaking out against the government 6 years ago. That's when the current Prime Minister, Prayut Chan-o-cha, led a coup that ousted the democratically elected government. He's now working with the protesters who have been coming out to Thailand's streets by the tens of thousands. The demonstrations started in July and ramped up last week with a gathering every day. What's different now from 6 years ago? A call for reform of the monarchy.
The people lost their faith in the royal institution. We can't deny that. If we don't talk about the monarchy openly, people will gossip about it eventually. The monarchy and the status quo have two choices. Either use violence like they did in the past, or change and preserve their status.
Unwavering in his mission to bring about reform and change, he says he was attacked last year for being outspoken, beaten so badly he spent 2 weeks in hospital. But he's not stopping.
I'm proud to be Thai, but I'm reluctant to tell the world that I'm Thai. We have been taught to obey and not question authority. I feel that we were blinded in the past.
And the thousands across the country are working to put that past behind them. Scenes like this are grabbing attention across Thailand and across the world, expressing the desire for monarchy reform, something unthinkable even just earlier this year. But there is an opposing view, and it's not just limited to Government House or the palace. Wearing yellow, showing their allegiance to the monarchy, those who support the king have also held rallies over the last few months. They've been much smaller, but some supporters say that could change. Allengagedcitizens Vigram was a member of parliament with the largest conservative party, but lost his seat in last year's election to a pro-reform party candidate.
I think there are more people who disagree with the current protest on the streets, but we must be patient. I believe that we will see more movement from those who want to protect the monarchy, but it will be peaceful. I think the voice of the younger people and the students are a minority.
Regardless of the actual numbers on either side of the issue, there's no dispute that the voices are getting louder of those who want change and to shake up Thailand's long-established power structure. Scott Heidler, Al Jazeera, Bangkok.
Ladies and gentlemen, this draws the curtains of this edition of the 5:30 Primary News over La Télévision du Monde. Join Priscille Messene at exactly 7:45 p.m. for the news in the French language. Until then, do have a pleasant evening. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.